What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's the Game Week 10 final thoughts. So I'm going to go through some of the latest press conference information and then answer some of your questions as well. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you are new around here as well. So we're going to talk about the latest Mitrovic update first of all. So this is what Marco Silva kind of said on him, right? So he's still a doubt. He was outside this morning doing some work. He's getting better, but still a doubt. So reiterating a few times, there is a chance that he could miss West Ham away. Says he'll be assessed tomorrow. Injury is the kick to his foot that he got in the international break versus Sweden. He did say he could be ready for Sunday or for next week, so that would be Bournemouth at home in Game Week 11. Day after day, we have to analyse him. He did individual work this morning. That doesn't sound ideal to me. Like, often you hear from managers, players come back from an injury. I know Mitrovic hasn't been out for ages, but they come back from an injury, they do individual work, then they kind of get reintegrated back with the team. Then they're like kind of ready to play matches. So the fact that Mitrovic is doing individual work on a Friday before a game on Sunday doesn't sound ideal. The only kind of good thing for us is Mitrovic is kind of integral to Fulham, right? It's very hard for them to replace him. So if he can be fit, they may well risk it and hope that they don't like kind of make the injury worse. I think if you think about other teams like Man City, for example, I know it's a bit of an extreme example because of their squad, but if De Bruyne is missing, that's not great for Man City. But they've got other players that can play there, like Bernardo Silva can play in as an 8, Gundogan as well. Even Grealish or Foden could play there if they had to. Whereas with Fulham, you just don't really want to have to replace Mitrovic. So it'll be interesting to see whether they do risk him. He said the damage is to a ligament in the foot, but it's not all that serious. Then he went on to say he'll be ready for Bournemouth for sure. Now, I've actually posted this video clip on my timeline on Twitter, so check it out if you want to listen to it. What he actually said was he'll be ready for Bournemouth for sure, we hope. Now, it didn't sound to me like he was saying we hope because we're just not sure, more just we hope because we need him type thing, and that they still think that he will be ready for Bournemouth. So if we take what he said, I think it's quite doubtful that he's going to play against West Ham away, but it does sound pretty good for Bournemouth at home. So for most people, I would probably just keep him because the fixtures from 11 to 14, you got 3 home games. Bournemouth at home really good. Villa at home is pretty decent. Even Everton at home is not that bad. And then the other one is Leeds away, which is not necessarily a massively difficult fixture either. And we know that when he is fit, he's nailed penalties, 90 minutes, all that kind of good stuff. So I think in most cases, I would keep. I'm trying to think of a scenario where I might sell him. I think if I had 2 free transfers and not much planned over the next few weeks to the point where I could just get him back later, then maybe I would do that for someone like Callum Wilson possibly. I think there's a lot of strikers around this price that are just either minutes risk, fitness concerns, or just generally not that nailed. Like, so Skamaka, for example, didn't start in Europe, so there's a good chance that he will start in the Premier League, but he could also go off around the 65th, 70th minute. Martial's only just back from kind of a pretty lengthy injury as well. So all these players I'm just not sure about moving on to from Mitrovic. So for most people, I would keep him. The bigger question is, do you play him or do you bench him? And I think, obviously, as always with those decisions, it's going to depend on who's on your bench. For example, on my wildcard, you will have heard me talk about, possibly putting Trippier on the bench. Now, had I done that, I would probably bench Mitrovic and just play Trippier instead. But if you've got worse players on the bench, just that haven't got good fixtures or the points expectations are just quite low, I think I would risk Mitrovic in my first 11 because I think there's a good chance that he either is fit and he starts, or he's just not fit and he's just not involved at all. It could be a case where he comes on for a cameo, that he is on the bench and he comes on for 15, 20 minutes, gets a 1-pointer, maybe even gets a yellow card and a 0-pointer. But I think if I'm kind of weighing up how likely I think that is, I think it's probably more likely that he either starts or completely misses out. So if you've got him, in most cases, I would just hold on to him. If we were closer to Game Week 16, and we know after that in the World Cup we've got unlimited transfers, I would probably just for the short term move him on and just not worry about it. But if he is back for Game Week 11, we've still got quite a few game weeks to go until that point, and I think he's still a decent option. So for most people, I would probably keep. So I thought I'd give you my latest thoughts on my team, especially as I own Mitrovic as well. So nothing much has really changed. I'm still captaining Haaland. I've not had any thoughts whatsoever about removing him. I don't think I'm going to make any transfers this week. Like Salah to De Bruyne is something that I have genuinely considered because I do think De Bruyne is a better option this week. But I still, in the back of my mind, just think that Salah from game week kind of 11 to maybe 14, 15 could still be a better option. I don't think it's guaranteed given how Liverpool have played and given how Man City have played. But I think I'm willing to take that risk, given that we're all just going to captain Haaland anyway. And if Salah can outscore De Bruyne, that will help me out. And if he doesn't, I'm not going to be massively punished by that. So I'm going to keep hold of Salah. I'm not going to remove Mitrovic, because if he's back for Bournemouth, then I quite like the idea of having him for that game. If we get to next week and he's still missing out, then I'll have 2 free transfers and I've got 1.1 million in the bank. That might let me do something a little bit more interesting, because if I move him on this week, it has to be for another striker like a Wilson or a Martial or a Skamaka, someone like that. Next week, if I wanted to, with 2 free transfers, I could shift that money into midfield, or possibly even to in the defence, if I can still manage the game week 12 blank. So essentially, I just don't want to move on him in case he's back for Bournemouth at home. So for me, I'm probably going to play him. I think Gay against Leeds and Nico Williams against Aston Villa at home are okay players that I could play instead of Mitrovic. And if he does completely miss out, I won't be too annoyed that one of those two has to come on for me. But I just don't think I'm that confident in them that I'm going to play them from the start. And Andreas Pereira is an option, but I just feel like if Mitrovic plays, I obviously want him in instead of Andreas Pereira. And if Mitrovic doesn't play, I think that game will be pretty tough for Fulham. And I think West Ham have defended pretty well, in which case I wouldn't really want Andreas Pereira on the pitch. So right now, I've put Nico Williams as first sub. I think there's probably some concerns about whether he keeps his place, but I'm just not sure yet that Aurier is going to come in and just completely take over that kind of right wing back, or possibly even right back spot if they kind of stick to the back four. So that is a concern maybe in the long term, but right now I think he'll be okay. If I do get genuinely concerned about that, I'll just switch these two around and put Gay as first sub. So that's kind of my plans. I'm going to captain Haaland. Salah's my vice captain. It could, to be honest, be Maddison or Zaha. They've both got really good fixtures this week, but I'm probably going to keep Mitrovic and play him. I think if I had had I got like Cucurella on the bench, I think some people might have. Wolves at home, I might consider playing him ahead of Mitrovic, possibly Perisic as well. If I had Trippier on the bench, like I had possibly planned at one point on my wildcard, I'd definitely play him instead. But given that it's Gay, Nico Williams and Andreas, I'm just going to play Mitrovic and hope that he overstarts or he just doesn't play at all. So I've put that this is a question about a second City defender, because I kind of just assume that most people have got Cancelo, but that's possibly not the case. So really this is just about a City defender, and that is Sergio Gomez. Is he a great option as a starting Man City 4.5 million defender, or will Pep end up playing Ake or Laporte at left back? So Laporte is back as well now, so there are quite a few options that Pep could go for. And essentially, the short version is, I just don't think he's worth going for, especially not before the blank, because Southampton at home's a good fixture, but if he doesn't play, he's then got Liverpool away and then a blank, and then really you don't need him till game week 13. So I think the preference would be to just see what happens over the next couple of weeks in terms of who's getting the minutes, who's starting where, over Southampton at home, then the Liverpool game, any Champions League games and stuff like that, and then maybe think about it from game week 13. I just don't think he's necessarily going to be nailed at all. He hasn't started a single game in the Premier League. He got, I think it was 49 or 50 minutes against Man United, but that's because Kyle Walker came off injured. And we know Cancelo is always going to play, so he's either going to play on the left and they could play someone as a right back, or probably what's more going to happen over the next few weeks while Walker is injured, Cancelo's going to play on the right, and like you say, it's going to be Gomez, or it's going to be Ake, or it's going to be Laporte on the left, and I just don't think it's worth it. So we can reassess in game week 13, because 13 to 16 Man City got really good fixtures, but right now I just do not think it's worth the risk to bring him on, take up a Man City spot, especially when they got Liverpool away and a blank in game weeks 11 and 12. So who are the best Perisic alternatives? No defenders are standing out this season except for the ones a lot of us already have, like Trippier. So he does look like a really good option right now. I'm a little bit gutted that I don't have him in my team. And it is difficult to see lots of defenders that we should be looking at. If you think about it, like Trent Alexander-Arnold, even if you were happy to bring him in, you're not going to do it until game week 12. There's no point in doing it now for game weeks 10 and 11 because it's Arsenal away and then Man City at home. And most people just don't want him anyway. Cancelo's really good for this week, but then it's Liverpool away, then it's a blank. So really you don't necessarily need him now if you haven't already got him until game week 13. Reece James a lot of people have got, and he would definitely be an alternative if you don't already own. But ultimately I would consider just keeping Perisic. I do think he's a minutes risk, and I think when I say that, that doesn't mean that I think he's going to be benched all the time, but there is a possibility that happens. I don't think it's a very big one right now. I think he's going to start way more games than he misses out for sure, but there's always a chance he comes off before the 60th minute, which is obviously hugely frustrating. But if you look at the kind of fixtures they got coming up, I think they're mostly okay from now until game week 16. I think because in your question, the lack of alternatives means I'd probably just keep hold of him if I already had him. So Brighton away, don't get me wrong, that's going to be a tough game given how they've attacked so far this season. But I wouldn't be worried about having to play him this week. Everton at home's pretty good. Man United away, look, that's a game that Spurs could go and win, but I do think they concede in, so that's not necessarily ideal. Then you got Newcastle at home, that's okay. Bournemouth away is okay. Liverpool at home, I think that's a bit like the Man United game, right? Spurs could definitely give them a decent game, possibly even pull off a win. But I think Liverpool will score in that game. And then Leeds at home is okay as well. So I would say I wouldn't be massively worried about playing him against any of these teams, to be honest, because he can always get attacking returns. But in terms of possible clean sheets, maybe Brighton, Everton, Newcastle, Bournemouth, Leeds, like they're okay fixtures. They're not amazing. You'd rather have Bournemouth at home than Forest at home than, Fulham at home or something like that. But as a fixture run goes, I think it's okay. So if I had Perisic, I'd probably be looking at keeping him. I'm actually looking at possibly bringing him in next week, and my original plan was to kind of get rid of him straight away. But if he continues to start, I might just keep hold of him. It does slightly worry me about the amount of games they've got because of the Champions League and stuff like that. But it's clear right now that Conte doesn't really fancy Doherty. Emerson Royale's obviously out, so you could play Sessegnon on the left and Perisic on the right. I know that didn't work out the kind of first time that they did it. It doesn't mean that he's not willing to kind of try it again. I do think at some point he's going to have to start a different right wing back. If Emerson Royale's not available, maybe Doherty or Jed Spence or someone like that is going to have to play. But I think in terms of starts for Perisic, I think they look pretty good. I think we can say that his minutes are a genuine concern because he played 6 against Fulham, only 54 against Leicester. Obviously, that game, 6-2 was pretty much done. I think that might have been a game where he started on the right as well. Yeah, it was, because I brought him in that week. And then 70 minutes against Arsenal. So he does start more often than not. So given that most of the alternatives I've got are on screen, Trippier, who you've already mentioned, you already own, Webster, I think Brighton defence in the weeks you need them are good. Like, for example, they play Nottingham Forest in game week 12. But if you need someone to play regularly, the fixtures are not that good. Cucurella is okay, but I don't think I can sit here and tell you 100% that he's going to play every single game. I think he'll get the majority under Potter, but we don't know he's going to get them all. And Zuma's okay because West Ham's fixtures are good. They defended pretty well. He's got goal threat. But if you need him for game week 12, they play Liverpool away, which isn't ideal. So given that I'm thinking about bringing Perisic in, I guess my advice if you've got him is to probably just hold on to him and hope for the best. So I've seen quite a bit of discussion around Son. Should we keep or sell him this week? My general opinion for any of the premium midfielders, so we're talking about Salah, De Bruyne and Son, is if you own them, you should probably just keep them for the next couple of weeks. So if you've got De Bruyne, you're happy that he's got Southampton at home. He's just been rested against Copenhagen in the Champions League, and he's definitely going to play in that Liverpool game as well. It might be slightly difficult, but Man City could definitely score in that game. So you probably keep hold of him. If you've got Salah, okay, Arsenal away and Man City at home is not ideal, but unless you're going to captain one of the other midfielders you bring in, I'm not sure it's worth a transfer. If I had 2 free transfers, and you could do the luxury move of kind of Salah to De Bruyne or Salah to Son with a view to get Salah back later, maybe that's a possibility. But if you've got 1 free transfer, I just think you keep whoever you've got, because Salah from game week 12 onwards could be a decent option. And then when you've got Son as well, if we just come back to the fixtures, okay, Brighton away again, it's not necessarily that easy, but I think it's a perfectly okay fixture to have him for. And then in game week 11, I think Son or Kane are genuine captain options. I think if Kulusevski is back, that makes Son a slightly difficult decision, because even if he starts, you know that his minutes could be slightly at risk. Richarlison could play on the left, Kulusevski could come on and play on the right. So a lot will depend on Kulusevski's injury status. But regardless, most people are just going to captain Haaland anyway. So I think just having Son as a player without the armband for Brighton away and Everton at home is okay. And then you can reassess in game week 12 whether you want to move on to Salah or whether you just want to keep Son and maybe move to De Bruyne later on. But I think that's my general thoughts. If you've got Son, hold. If you've got De Bruyne, hold. And if you've got Salah, hold. I guess the only other one is Sterling, right? And I don't talk about him a lot because he's not really been in the premium attacker conversation. But on his day, he can be just as good as them for a little bit of a cheaper price at 10 million. So could you do Son to Sterling? Possibly. but I don't know if Wolves at home and Villa away are that much better. So it comes back to that. Do you only have one free transfer going into a week where Man City are playing Liverpool and you might get a hunch of selling one of those players to someone with a better fixture? We've got a blank to contend with in game week 12. Is it better just to have 2 free transfers over the next couple of weeks? And bearing in mind, if you've got 2 next week, you don't have to use both of them. You can just start rolling them through 12, through 13. So I think Sterling's a good option. I just don't know if he's worth a transfer to get rid of Son. So I think if I had him, given that I'm not sure Kulusevski's going to start again, I think I'd probably just hold on to him. Same with Salah, same with De Bruyne. I've put which £8 million-ish midfielder, even though I know that Zaha is a little bit cheaper. But ultimately, I think most people have the money to have like kind of 1 or 2 £8 million players. And these are kind of the 3 that a lot of people are looking at right now. Foden and Saka are definitely good options, especially after the blank. But right now, it's a difficult choice to have to bring them in. So Bowen versus Maddison versus Zaha, specifically for game weeks 10 to 12. So because West Ham play against Liverpool away in game week 12, I would probably discount Bowen. Also, West Ham have European matches as well. Now, I don't know if that's going to affect them that much. Bowen obviously did really well last year and also played quite a few minutes in Europe. But I just think with all those factors, given you've got 2 other really good options to pick from, I would probably just discount Bowen. Now, if you've got him, I would not be in a rush to sell. They've got Fulham at home this week. That's a good fixture. I would not be using a transfer on Bowen unless... And it comes back to that strategy conversation again. If you've got 2 free transfers and you know long term you're going to do Bowen to one of these other 2 anyway, you could just bring that move forward a week. But I wouldn't, like Fulham at home, I would just keep holding him if I've only got 1 free transfer. So then it comes down to Zaha versus Maddison. And I think it's a pretty tricky call if we're only talking about 10 to 12, because it's Bournemouth away, so 1 away game, and then 2 home games against Palace and Leeds. Which, look, Leeds haven't actually conceded a huge amount of goals, and Palace defence was very good last year. It hasn't been great this year, but I just think Leicester always find a way to score, and Maddison is generally involved. So I think these next 3 fixtures are pretty good for him. Then you look at Zaha, he's got Leeds at home as well. Leicester away, so that's his away game, Leicester instead of Bournemouth. I would definitely say that's a little bit tougher. Not massively, but a little bit. And then Wolves at home. So maybe you could just about give the fixtures to Maddison with not a lot in it at all. But Wilfried Zaha's underlying numbers this year have been very, very good. His goal threat from open play is better than Maddison as well. And he's on penalties. Now, we know Maddison is on a lot of set pieces. That's how he got the goal in the last game from the free kick, or one of the goals. But I think I just about favour Zaha because... I guess you're asking 10 to 12 because you're probably wildcarding, in which case it's very close. If you've got an inkling that Maddison is better, just go for him. I think I'd just about side with Zaha, but not by much. For anyone else that's looking at this choice but is maybe thinking longer term, I definitely would go for Zaha then, because I think the fixtures from 13 onwards... Everton away, Southampton home, they've got Nottingham Forest away in there as well, are probably slightly better than Wolves away, Man City at home, Everton away and West Ham away. I think the Man City game really kind of just kills it a little bit for Leicester versus Palace. So if you're bringing them in for the short term, they're very close, but Zaha's better long term just in case you have to use your transfers on other moves. So if you're on a wild card in 13, it's close. I just about side with Zaha. There's really not much in it. I definitely go for Zaha if you haven't got your wild card. So there we go. That was some of my final thoughts ahead of the Game Week 10 deadline. If you enjoyed that video and you found it useful, please do make sure to give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. I will be back tomorrow with a deadline stream. Remember, the deadline is slightly later. It's 1:30 PM UK time, so it's 2.5 hours later than it usually is. So the stream will, of course, start later as well, probably around 11:30 or 12 o'clock, and I'll answer any questions that we haven't covered this week that you think of between now and then, and try and get through as many as possible. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. I'll see you on the deadline stream tomorrow. Make sure to give this video a like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you again soon.